Finding random frames in Oppenheimer until it's ugly. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Okay, cool shot. This one's actually pretty interesting in terms of the framing, because this is technically, I guess, an over-the-shoulder shot. We're looking over her shoulder, but this is not what you typically envision when you envision an over-the-shoulder shot. Usually she would be more towards this side of the frame, and he would be more towards this side of the frame, and you would be kind of behind her a little bit more, but I think the framing here is a little odd, but in a good way. And I think that has to do with the general mindset that the DP, Hoyte Van Hoytema, had when shooting this film in IMAX, because he wanted everything to be center frame for IMAX. And because the IMAX frame is so big that when you're watching it in IMAX, you'll literally have to turn your head to see like the edges of the frame. So instead, they centered everything, or centered most things, and you'll see a lot of that in this movie, that the object of your attention is centered in the middle of the frame. So not an ugly shot. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Oh, that's really cool. First of all, I just want to point out the depth of this image. When you have repeating objects of the same type, in this case, a person repeating through the z-axis of an image, it creates depth because our minds pick up the contrast between the size of her face and the size of his face back there, and it's a natural way to create more depth. Second of all, the lighting is great. The overcast skies are providing a very soft light on their face. You also maybe have a sun coming from this direction, providing a highlight side and a shadow side of the faces right here. This could also be augmented with an HMI shooting through a silk on this side, I'm not sure. And thirdly, I think what separates this image from a more independent, low-budget kind of shot is the attention to detail with the costuming and the color design. Because as you can see, even though there is a lot of variety in the colors of the costumes, blue, kind of orange, browns, burgundies, yellows, they all still have that general same level of saturation, and they are blending together in a way that creates color harmony, which I find very pleasing to the eye. So not ugly. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. That's a cool shot. So I think the shallow depth of field is actually doing a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to the beauty of this image. I just love a good shallow depth of field because it creates a nice soft image. It creates a nice soft edges around his face. As you can tell, this part of his face is out of focus, and then you go over half an inch, and this part of his face is in focus. And that just, first of all, it blurs out the background because there's not much in the background here. You don't need to see all that. And it draws your attention to his face, and his face is what is important in this scene because his reaction to the atomic explosion is the only thing that needs to matter in this scene. The way they achieve the lighting in this shot is by using airy sky panels and airy orbiters. I think they started off by using airy orbiters, which are more of a pointed, hard LED light coming from the window over here, and you can't see it in this shot, but before, let's go a few frames before. So as you can see here, the light right now is very white and more hard. You can tell by the shadow on his face. And that was created with airy orbiter lights. And then they just kind of did a lighting gag and switched over to the airy sky panels, which were more dialed in to this specific shade of orange and also a little bit softer on his face. And then, yeah, you get this more rich explosion color, which I love. Okay, not an ugly shot. Let's go towards the end. 1, 2, 3. Oh, yeah, I absolutely love this shot. Again, we have this incredibly shallow depth of field, which just focuses your attention on his face. And that's what I love about this movie in particular, out of all the Christopher Nolan movies, is that it is a character film at heart. And I think he chooses with his cinematography to really help focus the audience on the main character. So as far as lighting, you're obviously getting some kind of light coming from this direction through a silk. We can tell that because the shadow on his face is very soft and not hard. It's not coming directly from the sun. The other thing I see about this, which is actually pretty interesting, I don't see this a lot in films, is this light on the left side of his face. It's actually pretty blue, and I'm kind of wondering if they used a blue colored LED light coming from this direction to kind of give him a bit of an edge light, which is very interesting because that's not really a natural feeling light, but I think it works. It looks really good because it has color harmony with the blue sky. I kind of like this, and I'm kind of gonna maybe steal that for my next shoot because that's just pretty cool. But the main thing my eye is drawn to about this shot in particular is that I know I've seen this shot before, and it looks a little bit different when you see it online. Here's an image that I found online of this shot, and here is the one that I'm looking at currently. And as you can tell, the aspect ratio is different. In the one that I found online, you can tell that you can actually see all of this up here and all of this down here. And that's because this shot was filmed in IMAX. It was filmed in 65mm IMAX, and when you do that, you get a more boxy, tall aspect ratio. And as we have shown before in some of Christopher Nolan's other films, like Interstellar, Christopher Nolan likes to shoot half of his movie or a third of his movie or 2/3 of his movie in IMAX, but the other third of his movie he might shoot in anamorphic 35mm film, which gives you more of this widescreen aspect ratio. And so when you're watching this in an IMAX theater, you will actually see the aspect ratio change. You will see it change from this to this in certain scenes. Thing is though, this version of the movie that I'm watching right now is not the IMAX version, so it has a consistent aspect ratio throughout the film. It's just this aspect ratio throughout the entire film. I found this on streaming. I can't remember if it was Paramount Plus or HBO Max or something, but that's a little disappointing for me, honestly, because Christopher Nolan shot this with a different changing aspect ratio in mind, and all I get is this widescreen aspect ratio, and I can't find a streaming version of the IMAX one. So I don't know, I'm kind of just on a rant now, but it's just kind of frustrating to me that I can't find the IMAX ratio aspect ratio one. But anyway, next shot. Definitely not ugly. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's cool. Again, we are framing our focal point in the middle of the frame right here, even though he is not really, this isn't the most balanced kind of a frame I've ever seen, because you have this man on the left side, and then you don't have anything over here necessarily besides these people who are out of focus. So it kind of creates an unbalanced frame a little bit. But obviously the main thing that differs this shot from the ones we've seen before is the color, because this is in black and white. In order to achieve this black and white look, they actually had to develop an entirely new film stock for the IMAX camera that was black and white, because apparently that had never been done before. And they also had to develop an entire new process for developing that film, which I found pretty interesting. But the reason they did that was just to differentiate the perspectives of the characters that we see on screen. So we see, I think his name's Strauss here. I think Robert Downey Jr.'s character is Strauss, something like that. And his scenes, the ones that come from his perspective, are in black and white, while the scenes that come from Oppenheimer's perspective are in color. I think this just helps the audience to be able to ground themselves in where they are in the story, because this story is a very weavy one. It weaves between timelines, and I think that's a little jarring for the audience, but the way they did this makes it a little bit more just not jarring. Okay, not ugly. Let's go towards the beginning. 1, 2, 3. Oh, whoa, what is that? Okay, so I think this is the scene where they try to give a visual representation to subatomic particles, and they are using some kind of a whirligig contraption that I will show you a BTS photo for this particular shot. And I believe they are also shooting a lot of these shots in a water tank. And to be able to do this, they actually had Panavision create a custom waterproof probe lens for the IMAX camera. See, like this stuff, this is all, I guess, floating in water right here. Yeah, all of this is floating in water. It's supposed to be like subatomic particles. It's really cool. So not ugly. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. That's nice. The first thing I noticed about this shot is just how harsh the lighting is. You can see the shadow on his neck right here is pretty defined, and I think that just goes to show you the difference in approach to lighting the black and white portions of this film as opposed to lighting the colored portions of this film. Generally, when it came to shooting the colored film stock for this film, they would use large soft source lighting like airy sky panels or Asteras or ultra bounces, but when it came to the black and white portions of this film, they would actually use more time period appropriate lighting that serve more as a spotlight and create a harsher shadow, because that's the kind of lights they would have used in this period in time for events like this. So not ugly. Let's go towards the middle. 1, 2, 3. That's really nice. If I'm not mistaken, I think I've heard the DP talk about this scene in particular and why they used certain lenses for certain shots in this scene. And I will let the DP talk about that right now.
There's some longer lenses, like for the close-ups around the table, I would say that's mostly an 80. So we're feeling a little bit more removed from it. We're feeling like we are kind of listening in on a secret meeting. We are not inside people's heads, but we are relatively close to them, but we're outside the circle, so to say. If you shoot 3 close-ups next to each other, this is kind of the dynamics you can play with. We shoot 3 times the same close-up, but we shoot them in different lenses. And all these lenses, they represent sort of different feeling or different proximity of us viewers or filmmakers to our subjects.
I just find that very interesting to hear the thought process of a master DP on why he chooses certain lenses in certain situations, because even the difference between a 24 millimeter lens and a 50 millimeter lens or a 100 millimeter lens can have a difference in the way that the audience approaches the scene, the way that the audience feels attached to the scene or not. And I think that's always worth keeping in mind, even if the ideas behind why to choose a certain lens are kind of subjective and metaphorical. I think it's very important for filmmakers. So Not Ugly, 1, 2, 3. Oh, that's really nice. I love the color of the cabinets back here. That's what my eyes are drawn to. And then the nice harsh light on his face, but it's not creating super harsh shadows because of the angle he's at. Gorgeous. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, very nice. Looks like very natural lighting coming from a twilight sky. Gorgeous. 1, 2, 3. Besides her facial expression, still good. The lighting here is actually a little bit harsher for the color. That might have something to do with the scene that we are in. It's a very dramatic scene, so they might have chose to use more dramatic hard lighting for that. Not sure, but that would make sense. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, gorgeous. Albert Einstein is looking hot as always. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, cool. Nice soft lighting. Kind of the same setup we've seen before. Shallow depth of field, all that. 1, 2, 3. Oh, back to this scene. It's good. 1, 2, 3. Oh, that is an absolutely gorgeous close-up. Again, we have. I'm pretty sure when you see this much, this shallow of a depth of field, I don't know if that's how you say it or not, but I think when you see, like, I don't know, there's something about this image that just screams they shot this on IMAX to me. I'm almost 100% confident that this was shot on IMAX because it looks so crisp but also so soft. Correct me if I'm wrong if you have the IMAX cut of this movie, but yeah, Not Ugly. 1, 2, 3. Yep, that's cool. 1, 2, 3. Nice. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, gorgeous. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's cool. 1, 2, 3. Oh wow. Yep. I think we found it. Here's the context for this shot. As you can see, it makes sense story-wise, but as an individual frame, it's just not a very pretty frame. But that's the point. It's not supposed to be a pretty frame. It's supposed to be very upsetting and disturbing because Oppenheimer is being very disturbed in this situation. He's remembering or imagining what his actions may have done to people, and that is supposed to be disturbing. It's not supposed to be beautiful. So story-wise, film-wise, it makes sense. It's great, but as an individual frame, not a very pretty frame. So let me know in the comments which movie you want me to do next time and all that crap, and subscribe and like. Please do that. Please. Goodbye.